Theo, are you here?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Hi, Sumati.
Hi. Um, Thanks for joining us. You are on with several members of the steering committee for the chapter, and we are here. We sent a letter a few weeks ago providing you with notice that we are considering suspension or expulsion of you from New York City DSA. So we're here to hear your defense before we make a decision about that. And I just want to reiterate that some of the charges against you include harassment of individual members and undemocratic and disruptive behavior. And we outlined some of those examples in the email that we sent you. So you have 30 minutes for this discussion. You can appeal this decision. We haven't made any decisions yet, but you can speak in defense of your actions, and you can ask us questions that we can respond to the best of our ability. But the entire segment will take 30 minutes. So I will let you say your piece, and we'll go from there.
Well, Sumati, thank you for the introduction. And I want to say anything that happened here is nothing personal towards you as a person. And I want to make that clear. Because some of the things that happen has to do with a bigger issue that is bigger than DSA in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know, is all the CLC there, or how many people are there from the CLC today?
Sorry, can you repeat that question?
Is the whole CLC there, or you cannot hear me very well, or?
No, sorry. It's the steering committee for the chapter. So you have the two co-chairs, me and Chi, and I can read out the names of the folks if you can't see. It's Jake Colosa, who's our YDSA rep, Lychee, who is our Bronx Upper Manhattan steering committee rep, Jeremy, who is our North Brooklyn steering committee rep, Claire, who's our membership coordinator, Susan, who's our Queens rep, Finan, who's our Central Brooklyn rep, and Elisa, who's our secretary, Marcia, who's our labor branch rep, Asher, who's our South Brooklyn rep, and Dev, who is our treasurer.
So I thought the expulsion had to be by the whole CLC and not just by the steering.
No, the steering committee is empowered to make those decisions.
Well, as you know, let's go. Okay, so I have the list of what you claim I have done. To all the comrades out there, my name is Theo Chino. I have been a socialist since 2004, and I am here looked at to be expelled from New York DSA. First of all, I lived in my neighborhood since 1972 when I was born. I came here when I was 3 years old from France, and I joined the Youth Communist League in France when in '86, and in 1987 they kicked me out when they discovered I was also an American citizen. Back then there was the Cold War, and the Communist Party was not keen on the United States. We moved forward, and I wanted to tell the story because this expulsion is not really about me. This expulsion is about redlining. Whether DSA condemned redlining 2020. The same redlining we had in the 1970 in the building where I live today, 640 Riverside Drive. And the idea is we're talking about social housing, an idea that DSA is pushing called social housing. That thing in reality is called third-party transfer. And throughout I'm going to answer all those questions in the list, but I want every comrade to remember those items: third party transfer, UHAB, uh, and HPD. HPD is a city entity. UHAB is a nonprofit, and many of the steering committee members know that nonprofit because they are employed by that nonprofit or were employed at one time by that nonprofit. And HPD and some comrade in the working group are also OC within the housing working group and work for HPD. These people are not accused. I'm not accusing any of them because they're too low in the totem pole to understand what happened. They just got a check from these people and this entity, and it's not accusatory in any way, shape, or form. I'm 50 years old. I was the same way when I was 30. I believe you have. I believe HPD. I believe this entity when they came to my building and wanted to do social housing. So I know social housing upside down, and DSA has made social housing one of the housing platform. And as an old DS and as an old socialist, I can tell you the thing is a fraud. And this is where this whole thing about this accusation is about silencing me in a way. So I will go over the first one, establishing a website, dsany.org, that holds itself out as an official NYDSA branch. That accusation is false. The website is there because I am a social democrat. That's what socialism is. Social democracy. Lenin said it in 1920. He left the party and he created the Communist Party. That was the Third International. That is the difference that happened between socialism and communism. Then came Trotsky. He got expelled by Stalin in 1930. He left. He created the Fourth International. That's Trotskyism. That is revolutionary communism. Let's make no mistake. DSA was founded on the social democracy principle. What happened in Chicago in 2017 is an aberration, and it happened every time. Don't worry, it happened in the 70s, happened in the 60s, happened in the 50s. These kind of things are just bump on the road of social democracy. So no problem there. However, I am here as a social democrat to teach other people what social democracy is. That's why DSANY.org is. It's about a reading group. It's about restructuring DSA in New York in a different way. That's all it is. I call them the Harrington Style branch. Harrington Style because it's in the name of the founder of DSA. He deserved to have a branch named after him. So the idea of the Harrington Style branch is based on the French bylaws. The French bylaws is 150 years of socialism that started all the way to the Paris Commune in 1871, all the way to today. 150 years of experience, 150 years of struggle to decide how to make the voice of the minority heard. I am a minority. When I talk about minority, it's not my color of my skin. I'm talking about my ideas, to be able to nurture the minority idea within the socialist spectrum. That is me. I've been for 15 years a minority in the French Socialist Party. I push forward and I push the envelope. Nobody has ever dared kicking me out of the French Socialist. So now I'm here at DSA with experience. And the idea of those DSA and Y is not to supplant DSA, but more to be a caucus or something like that. All it is a site to explain social democracy to New Yorker and people who are interested, who do not like the Stalinist way that certain branches are ran. The second thing I'm going to talk about is bringing camera in the bomb branch meeting. This is the most funny allegation. Basically, there was that day of the branch took place. I was in my house. This is a Zoom, so you are welcome to my house. The same way I'm welcome to your house. We all there. There was a cinematographer who came to record Paperboy Love Prince, who I was working with, and I had the Zoom meeting that day as background noise, like someone who listened to the radio. Those in DSA who take themselves too seriously, they need to reconsider. I wasn't there I wasn't paying attention to what was happening to the Zoom. So that is kind of funny to give me that allegation, but that's okay. We'll continue. After that, there is the harassment of Channel I via Slack in October 2020. Channel I is a very accomplished lawyer. He's a black lawyer, Harvard educated lawyer. It's a great resource to have here at DSA. The problem is she came in with a Democratic Party mindset to make race the problem that we had, to make race the issue inside of DSA. If the definition of a plant, the definition of a plant, that is, she is the best plant we could have. She came in, she made a mess, and she made me the scapegoat. So now you're going to have to choose on that. Chanel is a very accomplished woman. There is no doubt. But she's not a socialist. And the only reason the Bronx Upper Manhattan branch got her to join the electoral committee to organize the OC election in the bomb branch was simply so she would take vote away from me. That's a simple calculation, and I'm okay with that. That's how the game is played. However, when Chanel came, she started insulting everybody. In the proof, in the document you have, I mean, you can see she literally calls other people. She literally called other people, if I remember, clowns. You are attacking a black woman and things like that. So the thing is, she was defending her candidate. She was defending her candidate, Kirsten Jordan, who was a member of the PLS, the Party of Socialist Liberation. That is a Trotsky party. Itzhak, during the meeting, reminded everybody what PSL was. There is nothing wrong with Christian being a member of the PSL. We all started radicals. I was one of them. So I know there is no issue. But the thing is, when there is candidate running for office, it is our duty to ask questions to those candidates. It is our duty to ask them where they came from, where they got their socialism back, their socialism, fight. So Kristen Jordan is a candidate. She's a great organizer. Nothing there. However, because I live in a social building at 640 Riverside Drive, which the landlord is the company for which my comrade works for or worked for. Basically, the question came up many times during the questionnaire. What is your knowledge of third-party transfer? And when I called it up on Slack, that's when everything went sideways. And she started accusing me of me being a man attacking a black woman. And this continued. She started barraging everybody else. And she even went as far as calling another comrade who lived in Naisha, literally telling her to go back and make ends meet because she was a Harvard-educated woman and she was beautiful. This is why you are trying to kick me out, because I called out someone who did not have yet their socialist credential, and I sent an email. I sent an email with Chanel included in it to two lawyers. One is a French lawyer who works for a bank and is a socialist. She got elected as a socialist for a small municipality outside of Paris. And I sent the email as well, CCing another comrade who is a member of the Austrian Socialist Party. He's also a lawyer who does merger acquisition. I said, well, maybe those two lawyers, because they're all lawyers, they can talk to each other and basically grow Chanel into a great socialist, like she should be. That didn't happen, and they called that harassment. You have read the email, so I'm not going to go over them. But in that email were also included three other socialists, three Austrian socialists one lived in New York, one lived in Austria, and two lived in Austria. One is 70, the other is 60, and the other is 40. The idea was if together they could explain to her what socialism is about. Instead of that, she continued saying she was being harassed. I gave up at that moment. The next point that you're accusing me of, inflammatory post in the bomb Facebook group in September 2018. Well, Nothing worse than calling Tish James, calling her not being a progressive. That's not better than the NPC that just called Joe Biden a senile old man on the page of the DSA homepage. So there is nothing different. So the idea that the reason I was giving my opinion on Tish James is because she just got elected Attorney General, and she used to be the public advocate as a social as a tenant in a social housing building. I have gone to Tish James since the moment she was elected to explain her what is the scam that happened with UHAB, third party transfer, and HPD. That's what happened. She never paid attention, and I posted in 2008. She's a black woman, yeah, but she doesn't know what a progressive mean. I guess she got elected with the working family, but she forgot her roots. That's okay. It happened. People change. I am an old socialist. I'm a social democrat. I have some idea. After that, we're talking about spamming the Bronx Upper Manhattan Electoral Working Group listserv with Rep My Block 2018. That one is also funny because it was only one message. However, that single message created 40 replies. What that message said was simply, we are starting to petition for county committee. Anyone who wants to run, they're welcome to join me. And 40 message went back and forth explaining, trying to explain what is county committee, because we had a meeting at the electoral working group. And Jazz, one of the OC, took the whole 25-minute allocated to talk about the wrong thing of what he was and what he can bring to DSA to grow DSA within the Democratic Party. So Jazz left me 5 minutes. They took a vote and basically was sent to the side. I was very upset. I sent one message. There is nothing really spamming. But people call me clown, insulted me, called me joker. And that was February 2018. That was 2 years ago. Distributing literature at the EW group meeting? No, I did not do that. The literature I distributed was in front of the bomb meeting, in front of the general meeting outside the church where I was standing and saying I was running for public advocate. There is nothing wrong that my First Amendment right to distribute any literature I feel in front of any street, in front of any church or anything I feel like. And that's the right that any candidate, anyone in DSA has the right to do. So that's basically you again. This is a false accusation, basically. So I'll let it slide. It's not the important part. After that, attempting to unilaterally edit and collectively draft document for the bylaws. That's false. Chuck, Chad, and Sam were part of it, and they made the group believe that these were the bylaw in effect for the electoral working group, when those bylaw were nothing. They were just a draft that they were never voted on, and nothing happened. So I put my amendment in there, and I fought for the amendment I believe were right for the electoral working group. That's it. Now, people want to say, oh, it wasn't Chuck had his OCD way of doing it, that it needed to be done a certain way. Well, I had my OCD way as well, that it didn't help me. So we had a big, long discussion, and finally they fess up that these bylaws were just draft. They had nothing to do. We could go from scratch and start from zero. And we were all allowed to do that. That's part of what it is to be in a bylaws committee. I'm not easy. You don't come to me and you just bump me and and you kick me. So now we're going to go to the most important part of the meeting. The harassment of Sam W. and Gregory Baguette, the harassment, the disruption of the housing working group, and the harassment of Sia Weaver on Twitter and Sam W. on Slack. This is where DSA has to make a decision now. DSA is pushing for social housing. What does that really mean? And I have prepared some quick literature, because that's not that easy. So I will show you the literature very quickly. So this is my where I live, 640 Riverside Drive. and the management is Concord, and the owner is JP UHAB. I pay $169 of rent per month. That's what we pay in this building, an average of $600. The problem of social housing and the way that the nonprofit is doing it is basically taking black-owned property and tell the resident they have to move. This is for real. The city take a third American-owned property. Is that what DSA is about? Pushing for policy that steal building from people who work hard to get their equity? This is our building, becoming home. Over the last 20 years, our building, 640 and 644 Riverside, is a laboratory for real estate disaster. I know social housing, how bad it is when it is badly done. And it is so bad that in 2014, you have ended up in the worst landlord list. The nonprofit ended up, because of our building, on the worst landlord list. This is what UHAB is about. So basically, 2014, we started the project in 1999. This is 2014. We're still dealing with shoddy work and debt. Coming back, why am I so mad? Why did I become so mad? Because one of the contractor, who is owned by Concord, allowed to be working by UHAB, has been caught cheating workers' wages. Literally, this is real. You go into the court record, you can see it. MDG management stole worker wage. New York City Housing Authority picked up a general contractor charged by the Fed. This is Rooney, Mr. Rooney, right there. He came to my building and told me everything will be fine. Last year, Mr. Rooney basically was made a dinner chair of the gala of UHAB. That is the problem. Mr. Rooney, who stole wages. So now we're going to get to the board of my building. This is a picture of the UHAB people that run my building. You can see there is Celeste, there is Brent Sharman, and Millie. Basically, they are directors, high director within UHAB. They're the one who run my building and have been running my building for the last 10, 15, 20 years actually now, 20. The problem is what happened. Here is Celeste again with oh my God, you recognize Farah. She's with Farah, and suddenly she became DSA. And then I go through her Instagram, and who do I discover? Farah and Sia Weaver are best friend. They're best friend. So wait a minute. For all this time, I've been fighting against Celeste. And Celeste is the best friend of Sia Weaver, who decide what the social policy for DSA are. I just went crazy. You come to my house and you try to take my house away from me, and to take it away from thousands and thousands of New Yorkers who are low class, low wage worker, and you tell them we're going to raise your rent $1,000. What should I feel when I discovered that? I got mad. Nothing wrong there. And then there is the Epstein bill, who's cozying up with everybody. There again, we're going to lose our home. And then we go after we're set up for failure. The people at HPD, here is the commissioner, the first employee director of HPD, NAB, for asking Yank and Ned's ticket. And then we go further. Here is her employee, Wendell Walter, $2.5 million in bribe, in jail. And last week, a housing official also taking for parking placard. And X-City, basically, there is a candidate called Rick who's running against in the 37, who's an employee. He knows, who used to be an employee of FPD, he knows the corruption. He knows it. So this is how infuriating my discovery were when I decided to call out to say, let's talk about it. And nobody within DSA leadership has wanted to talk about it, to the point that I had to go crazy just to get an Afro-socialist an Afro-socialist uh, resolution for us to look at how social housing is done in New York. What have you done as the CLC steering committee? You throw that letter away. But the thing is, that's the decision you're going to have to make tonight. Is you're going to have to investigate everything that letter says. This letter is not a joke. This is for real. People are losing their house, and nowhere in that letter I talk about anyone in particular. This is about DSA. This is about what do we belong, what do we believe. So I wanted to finish. I mean, that's very clear, that's very quick. You can ask me any question you want, because that's what I would like you to do, is to ask me question, because I am not blaming anyone. In the letter, I say it clearly. You have HPD prey on young people who are like us, who are people with values, people who feel like we can change the world. That's what UHAB does. They prey on us. So basically after that, they go to those they go to those developer, and they let the developer load debt. The building is it's 640 Riverside in front of the Hudson. That can get a loan of $45 million. We're going to spend $45 million because that's the loan we can get. The bank will give us that. However, the rent roll of all those tenants only can sustain $6 or $7 million. What are we going to do with the $22 million rest of the loan that we're going to have to pay it back in 20 years? Sia Weaver, I asked her that at the Ghani event when she came. I asked at Ghani, I say, Sia, what are we doing with the $22 million? And she said, oh, well, the city might forgive it. Maybe. Who will be the mayor in 20 years? A Republican who will be worse than Bloomberg and who will say, hey, guys, the building, you have to pay or you go out. Lucky. I'm lucky. I can afford it. However, my neighbors cannot afford it. Many of them will be left in the street. They will be left going to the welfare line. They have Social Security. They can live on Social Security without asking anyone. They work hard. They were operated for AT&T. They were people working class. And suddenly we're telling them with social housing, you have to go to the welfare line. Is that what DSA, is that what socialism is about? That's not what I learned 15 years ago. And that's what I want to share with you. But the thing is, you have to want to listen to it. You hear me, but you never wanted to listen. So just to finish, I'll tell you a little story. My grandfather was Robert Chino my grandfather was basically one of the founders of Congress for Racial Equality, CORE. He was in Chicago, and he did the first sit-in. Basically, there was no sit-in back then. They got together and they did a sit-in, black, white, and an Asian guy, my grandfather. And they went into the bar and said, we want everybody to buy a donut for 5 cents. Because black people, they were charged more than white people to buy a donut. So they took over the restaurant. They sat there until everybody paid the same price for a donut, regardless of their race, creed, or anything. That's what socialism is. That's what we need to continue. And that's what I hope you guys will do in the future. But we cannot, when someone tells you social housing is bad and he shows you the proof, you cannot continue dig yourself and say Tio Chino needs to be kicked out because it's not me. The proof is there. It's not me against Sia. I hope that you guys turn around, look at it, and use all the weapon you use against Amazon and Jeff Bezos, and turn it and go after the corruption that live here, that is causing us to see our rent go from $200 to $1,000. Because not only it affect us, but it affect you. Because the market rent of $3,000 wouldn't be $3,000 if we were to follow the law. That's what we're about. That's why we fight to get people like Jabari and in state assembly. And so this is what I'm about. I'm an old socialist, and I hope you don't kick me out, but you listen to the story I have to say. And because kicking me out in a way is saying that social housing works perfectly and we want to throw people under the rug. That will never grow socialism that way. Will never. It's bullshit. So I'm done. I hope you don't kick me out. And I will continue to advocate for socialism in New York. I will thank you for that, because when I was community board, the founder of the HDFC coalition, Jordi, called me, hey, there is the socialist in the room. And basically says, I like Franco. That's what socialism was in 2008. So I hope that we can have a productive discussion starting now, and we can put all the past, what has happened in the past 2 years under the ground and work together. Thanks, comrade.
Thank you, Theo. Thank you for explaining. We're going to deliberate as a steering committee. We're at the time for this discussion, and we'll let you know what our decision is. But
So
thank
is
you.
there any question or no question?
I don't think that anyone has any questions. We're at time for this section. So we'll deliberate as a steering committee and make a decision and let you know as soon as we do.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice evening.
You too.